Hey guys, this is Michael from Clutter Stuff. This is my second video in my series on the old Star Wars expanded universe under Lucasfilms before it was purchased by Disney. Uh, and this is the expanded universe now called Star Wars Legends. Disney, when they purchased Lucasfilm, declared the previous expanded universe uh, non-canonical. Whereas it was originally it was canon, and Disney said it's no longer canon. So what I wanted to talk about in this video is actually a little bit of a history of the expanded universe before we start getting into some of the more specific, kind of an overview of the history. And I also wanted to do a update on the contest that I'm currently running on Star Wars. So details about that will be at the end of this video. The excuse me. Excuse me. So basically, after Star Wars was a big hit, one of the ways that George Lucas was able to uh, continue to build his empire, build Lucasfilms, is while he didn't get much in the way of payment for the first Star Wars movie, especially when you consider how big it became back in 1977. Uh, what he did do is he negotiated the licensing rights. And so what you have are really two different stages in the expanded universe. In the early days, the period I'd say up through the end of the 80s, what you have are kind of a jumble of a bunch of different stuff coming out because uh, George Lucas was not particularly uh, careful with who he didn't really care too much who he gave that license to. So you have, for example, in 1978, the Star Wars Holiday Special, which if you haven't watched it, the entire video is available on YouTube. I will put a link in the description. It may not be there forever. I'm not sure when. That might eventually get taken down. Who knows? But it is currently all available on YouTube. And the holiday special is just notorious. You have the droids and the Ewoks cartoons that were out in the 80s, some Saturday morning cartoons. And you have, I love these when I was a kid, the Ewok Adventure movie, and then the sequel to Ewok Adventure, Ewoks Battle for Endor. And these came out in, let's see, I want to say it was 1985. It doesn't say on the back of the DVD here. Let me see if it says it on. No, it doesn't say it here either. But it was in the mid '80s. These came out. I was still a fairly small child, and basically, these were made for TV movies. They were not very good. They were. I mean, I personally love the Ewoks. I was in the second grade when Return of the Jedi came out. So, I stinking loved the Ewoks. I had stuffed animals. I had all the action figures. I had the Ewok Village playset. Oh, love the Ewoks. You also had starting in 1977, you had the first run of Marvel Comics. Again, this is before Marvel Comics was obtained by Disney. And Marvel Comics started by adapting the movies and then went off book. They made up their own stories. And that ran through, I want to say, about 1987 or so. It was, I believe, 107 issues. And They did adapt both the original Star Wars, and I want to say Empire Strikes Back was also part of that run. They had a separate miniseries, 4-issue miniseries for Return of the Jedi when that came out. And you also had some early novels as well. I have just one of those, Han Solo at Star's End. And we'll be talking a little bit about some of those novels in future videos. But, basically it was George Lucas just, selling his license to anyone willing to make a Star Wars product. Anyone willing to give him a little bit of money and put the Star Wars name on something. George Lucas was definitely ahead of the time when it came to self-promotion. Then around, I want to say the mid-90s, you started getting a real feel for kind of a new idea that the Star Wars universe was a universe. And this kind of started, this expanded universe, the real, expanded universe, kind of started around the mid-90s with the publication of Heir to an was Heir to the Empire? It was either Heir to the Empire, I believe, was first by Timothy Zahn. And that was a novel, and it was considered to be the official follow-up. What happens after Return of the Jedi? And at that point, I believe that George Lucas was not planning to do the prequels or any sequels. And so the novels kind of became the official continuation. And then within a few years, as more and more novels were published, within Lucasfilm, they developed what was known as the Holocron. And basically what this was a database, and a team of people whose job it was to keep the story straight. They created a chronology of all the stories, and then sometimes they themselves would come up with story arcs and assign writers to work within those story arcs, both within the novels, and then when Dark Horse Comics came along again around the same time in the mid 90s and started publishing additional Star Wars comics. And that's one of the things that kind of frustrates me about Disney's announcement to say that it was no longer canon. The expanded universe is no longer canon. Is that what they said in their announcement was that the material was inconsistent, and that it was there was no way for them to maintain a universe with so many contradictions. And so they wanted to start from scratch so that they had a blank slate to work with. And I can understand the blank slate point of view. When you purchase a property, you're purchasing the name of the property. You want to be able to do whatever you want to do with it, especially when some of the creations, I guess, that were part of that property were not as good as others. We'll go ahead and leave it at that. But just to give you an idea of what the Holocron did, which is out of the way, this is a novel from 2009, and at the beginning of all of their novels, starting around, I want to say around the turn of the millennium, but I'm not exactly sure when it was. But you can see that they have a timeline. And this shows you where every single one of the novels fits into the timeline with the movies, with short stories. And then you can actually, if you look hard enough, you can even find even more expanded timelines that include comic books and some of the other material that was that was produced as part of the Star Wars expanded universe. So that's kind of where we were at. I mean, you could see also the sheer number of novels. Let me show you that timeline again. I mean, we're talking, at this point, there were dozens of novels. And they went as far up as this novel takes place about 40 years after A New Hope. Okay, and this was part of a trilogy of books under the series Fate of the Jedi. You can see that right up under the Star Wars. This is the third novel, Abyss. So, really, this is what I'm trying to, I guess, celebrate in this series of videos is the expanded universe from about the mid-90s up through 2012 when Disney purchased them. And that's not to say that I won't talk a little bit about earlier items, and not to say that I'm going to touch on everything within the expanded universe, but I am going to talk about some of the comic book series, and I'll talk about, in particular, the novels. It was, I enjoyed them for many years, and I was quite upset. I actually have a huge box, and that's only because I ran out of shelf space in my office, but I have a huge box. I've probably got 4 or 5 dozen novels, Star Wars novels, and I don't have all of them. But we're going to go through them. And so, anyway, the last thing I want to talk about, as promised, were to remind everyone about my giveaway, to remind you what the prizes for the giveaway were. We've got the Star Wars Episode 1, all of the variant covers for issue 1, and then the entire series for the Dark Horse comic adaptation. We've got Star Wars Episode 2 and Star Wars Episode 3, both the miniseries and the trade paperback adaptation of the film. So a fairly large collection of Star Wars comics. And I will say that even though these are what I'm advertising as the prize, you will also be getting a few other things. There may be additional comic books. I may toss in a novel or two. You may get some other Star Wars treats, but everything will be Star Wars themed. Yeah, so hopefully I'll get some entries. As of right now, I only have a single entry, and hopefully I'll see more. So the rules of the contest are this: it is open. The contest is open to anyone within the United States or Canada. You have to be a subscriber to my channel, and I will check that. I will verify. So make sure when you subscribe that your subscriptions are public. And basically what I want you to do is either leave a comment on, you can leave it on this video here if you wish, or you can leave it on the original, the first video where I talked about the giveaway. I'll leave a link to that down in the description. And you can either leave a comment or make a video answering just one simple question. And if you do make a video, please also leave a comment giving me a direct link to that video. I don't, sometimes I miss videos, so I don't want to miss yours if you create a video. Take the time to do this. So leave a link to your video in either the comments on this video or the last one. And the question I would like you to answer is, regardless of how you feel about the prequels, whether you like them, I know there are a couple of people who liked the prequels, whether you liked them or hated them, if you think they are just horrible movies, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. They're not perfect movies. So if you could change one thing, and I know for some people it may be hard to pick just one thing, but if you could change just one aspect of the prequels, whether it be the prequels as a whole, whether it be about one of the specific movies, in order to make the prequel trilogy better, improve the prequel trilogy, what would that one thing be? And I know, hopefully I'm going to get a wide variety of answers in this contest, because there are quite a few things that people might be able to pick out as bad or needing improvement. I've seen some people complain about basically every aspect of every single one of episodes 1 through 3, from beginning to end. I've seen people do that. I don't think everything is horrible about them, but I've seen some people do them. So pick whatever you think would have the greatest effect, the greatest improvement. If you could just have, change one thing to have the greatest benefit, and make a video or leave it as a comment, but really try to sell me on it, because unlike most giveaways, I think I'm not going to do this as a random draw. I want to actually, I think I'm going to actually pick what I think might be the best answer. If it's too close to call, if I find that, all of the suggestions are great and none of them really stands out above all the others, at that point, then I will take all of the entries and do a random draw, because we do want to have one winner. But if, come up with something good, come up with I'd like to hear some great ideas about this and really get people talking about Star Wars. So anyway, the contest will run through March 31st. So you've got some time to think about it, and hopefully post a video, or leave a comment. I look forward to reading and hearing what you think. So thanks a lot, everyone, and we will talk soon. All right, bye.